Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. These are a crop of onions that I put in as sets last autumn. This is a variety called Sen Shui, and I'm lifting them because you can see they're starting to go to flower. In other words, they're bolting. If your onions bolt before the bulb is ready to harvest, it usually means it's been stressed, and usually by being too dry. However, the culprit here, I'm 99% certain, is not the weather, it's not me, it's a mole. Moles get in underneath the vegetables, and the roots, poor things, have been dangling in midair. Just not enough root has been making contact with the soil to provide enough nutrition to grow the bulb. You can see very different roots. Now, the mole is not actively damaging the plant, it's not eating the roots, it's going about its business, and in the process, creating a hollow and a vacuum, which obviously the roots can't use in any way. So what I'm doing, I'm cutting my losses, I'm digging them, partly to get them before they bolt, because when they bolt, all the energy will go into the flower, you get a hard stem, and they won't be so good to eat, and also because I need the space. And these aren't going to get any better. If the weather was very hot and dry, I would leave these on the surface of the soil to dry back. But we're going through a much damper phase, so I will dry these in the greenhouse. And then when the tops are dried back and they're thoroughly dry, I can store them. This is a Salvia amistad, which has been protected over winter in the greenhouse. It was here in the dual garden, dug up, potted up, and just kept reasonably frost-free. Then hardened off, and you can see it's already flowering. Having got the perennials, the bigger plants, in place, I can now plant annuals around them. These are sunflowers. This is claret, which is a shade of red rather than yellow. And although I've been watering these every day, they're drying out quicker than they can absorb water. Look, that's pretty dry and longing to get in the ground. Now, obviously it makes sense to go as far as possible so I'm not treading through and on them. And these will obviously grow tall, so we'll go right in there and put one there. That can go in there. Now these are Tithonias, Mexican sunflowers, and they're absolutely one of the staples of the dual garden because there is no orange flower that I know of that is as intense as a Tithonia. They have incredible depth. And so they sing out from the border. They're moderately tricky to grow to this stage, but once they reach this sort of size, they're easy. So the whole shift, the whole feel of the garden, and particularly the dual garden, now changes. It's a new chapter, and these are very much part of it. Tithonias are less tall than the sunflowers, but the plants are so bright, you can put them in the middle of a border. Of course, sunflowers like sun, and the same with Tithonias. So these are not plants for deep shade. They'll take some shade, but they need at least half the day of sunlight in order to perform well. So give them a chance, give them a sunny, warm spot, and they will be completely happy until the first frost. And then that's it, they're gone, they're compost. There you go. So the plan is that I will work through the whole of the jewel garden over the next day or so, placing out all the annuals that we've grown from seed and sowed in March and April to create a completely new tapestry of colour that will go on flowering until the first frost. But above all, it's a glorious display of summer, of sun, and the celebration of rich colour. Now, last summer, Arit went to visit a garden in Greater Manchester, where they not only garden for wildlife during the day, but also at night.
When you arrive at a garden and you're immediately met by plants, you know you're in for a real treat. My eyes are darted between grasses and perennials and shrubs and trees. And this lovely meandering path is doing its job because I want to carry on and see more.
8 years ago, designer Sharon Hockenhall was offered a unique opportunity to transform 2 acres of grounds surrounding a new build property. Not one to be easily phased, she created this beautiful garden after navigating some difficult conditions. And from the get-go, she had a very clear brief.
What is your ethos?
As a gardener, I am very much looking at a space and how we share it with the creatures that also share this space. And as a designer, I'm always eager to try and enhance people's spaces in terms of habitats. And to provide as much variation of planting as possible. Sometimes that's quite challenging, but sometimes I have clients who are also wanting to attract wildlife. I think that is very much driven in everything that I do.
This area is so lovely and lush feeling, isn't it? And it's got a nice design flow to it as well. All these lovely persicarias here and seeing the hostas blended in. And I love the fact that you've got the little hot spots of things like the echinacea as well, you know, that these plants that can just enjoy that extra bit of moisture.
Yeah, so this area is the dampest space and we're on sand, so it's a little bit of a mystery. We think it's something to do with compaction. So a new build property, lots of materials and heavy machinery stored in this area.
I guess you could just kind of really go for it on the bog plants.
We could, yes, and we do have some fabulous specimens.
Ah, now this changes completely again. Now we go into a more gravel dry garden.
It is, yes, and it does get a lot of sun in the midday. It's a garden of 2 halves because we do have quite a lot of shade as well. So the challenge was to sort of have something that works with a part shade and in full sunlight.
So quite a formality, isn't there, to this space in comparison to the meandering of the bog garden?
Yes, there's definitely more structure, more, it's low-lying structure, I suppose.
The nice thing about having formal structure is I like having the movement beside it. So you've got things like the Verbena Bampton, I love that.
Yes.
And then you've got Stipa tenuissima blowing in the breeze, and the echinacea, the cosmos, lovely verbascums there. So you've got that structure and then that fluidity.
Yes. Also, we've got lots of plants here that are perfect for the night. Pollinators full of nectar as well.
Yeah, Kochiana, always smells delicious.
Yeah.
As you wander further into the garden, the structure gives way and the garden takes on a freer, more relaxed style.
How lovely to be able to incorporate a meadow and the orchard into the garden.
We're all about trying to give as much as we can in terms of helping our pollinators, and the wildflower meadow is quite key.
How did you actually physically get the meadow to become incorporated?
With the build of the walled kitchen garden, we had to excavate an enormous amount of soil. It's actually sand underneath, and this area was covered in sand. It actually gave us a good basis to re-sow and start from scratch.
And that's such a great thing to be able to do, because often it's like, right, take out the soil, bring back in soil, but of course you've created this extra habitat that's here. And so what sort of things are you attracting into the meadow?
So we do have the cinnabar moth, that's a yearly sighting now. We've had the burnet moth, that's a new sighting for me here. We've introduced crickets now, we have anthills, and we also have other wildlife that sort of come in here. We've got rabbits, we've got foxes, and we have a badger as well.
Oh, wow. Great, so they're all welcome.
They are all welcome.
And that's all down to this very species-rich mix of flowers and grasses that you've got here.
We have yellow rattle, we've got some legumes in here, some clovers in here, lots of different types of grasses.
What's great is that this garden has been put together in layers with plant choices and habitat creation for the wildlife. But we often think about wildlife just during the day. And what Sharon has done very cleverly is considered this garden at night time. And of course, us humans at night want to have lots of light. But do we really need it?
The way we light our gardens can have a big impact. Too much or the wrong kind, and it can confuse and disrupt the very wildlife we're trying to support.
So nice to be in the garden, isn't it, this time of day?
Absolutely, yes.
The ambience is completely different. I mean, all the plants just come alive in a totally different way, don't they?
They do, and we have some sort of specific plant choices in here which are very sort of scented during the night. We have done that really to sort of try and attract those nighttime pollinators. Because we have so many out there, we have a huge workforce that are doing an amazing job. There are certain things that we can do to help them.
So things like the Nicotiana that I saw earlier, but all of a sudden I can get that smell coming through.
Yes, that's right.
And I think it's lovely. You know, we always think about the daytime. We're always thinking about what we see and what we need. And of course, the bees and the butterflies are out. But as you say, there's this completely different workforce of creatures, bats that come out at this time of night as well. And I guess we've got to do different interventions in the garden to enable them to be here.
Yes, I think there's three things to try and guide us when we are trying to light our gardens at night, and it's choosing sort of a low lumen light, so less brightness, keeping them at low levels, so you're highlighting pathways, you're highlighting planting, that gives accent, and also less is more.
Sharon has created something really special here, and it shows our gardens can be vibrant places brimming with life, even after the sun goes down.
If we can treat our gardens as a 24-hour resource for wildlife, not just thinking about what comes into the garden during the day, we can make sure that we enrich our environment and really, really support wildlife totally throughout the day and the night.
Lighting obviously does look very beautiful in a garden at night, but just two things to bear in mind. The lower the light level, the better it is for wildlife. And two, when you go indoors or when you go to bed, make sure all the lights are off. Don't leave them on overnight, because that really confuses wildlife. No lighting in here, but the tomatoes are growing well. But there is a danger of whitefly. That's got progressively worse over the last few years. So what I'm doing is taking some measures to deter whitefly. And the first one is by planting these. This is the French marigold, Tagetes. And the reason I'm planting it is not because it's edible, but because the plant has a chemical with a very strong scent. It's much the same as the scent of lemon peel. And all it's doing is distracting and deterring the whitefly. Basically, they don't like it, so they move away. Then they'll leave the tomatoes alone. I grew these from seed, very easy to grow. And French marigolds are tender. and of course have brilliant orange flowers. And I usually grow them for the jaw garden. But I'll have some left over for that. But these are going to do a job of work. And as I'm handling them, they've got a very distinct odour, not unpleasant at all. Right, that's phase 1 of the whitefly deterrent. I've got trays here of basil plants. Now, these have been grown in plugs, and you can see they're nice, strong plants. Now, these want to be quite big plants. Give basil the right conditions, and you've got a mini shrub. So don't plant them too close together. I would say 6 inches is as close as they ever want to be. And I always put it in a row along the front of the tomatoes because they need more water. So I can water them without over-watering the tomatoes themselves. But it also forms a kind of hedge to deter the whitefly. Because the whitefly, again, are put off by this very strong scent you get from the basil. The only thing you have to watch when you grow tomatoes and basil together is that they have a slightly different watering regime. Basil should never dry out. I water the basil 2, sometimes 3 times a week, whereas tomatoes really don't need watering more than once a week unless it's very hot, and then they can have twice a week. Right, that's the companion planting, which hopefully will be effective, at very least at controlling whitefly, if not completely deterring it. However, as well as companion planting, I've also got a problem that needs biological control. I planted the peach in here about 4 years ago, and for the last couple of years we've had really good harvests of delicious peaches. But last year, when it was very hot and dry, it began to be affected by spider mite. Now, spider mite suck the sap from the leaves, and obviously that affects the growth of the plant, which will affect the production of fruit, so not good news. However, there is another mite called Phytocelius that likes nothing better than to dine on spider mite. And I have a couple of thousand of them in my pocket. To use it, you need to wet the leaves, because all I then do is sprinkle them on. Now, this works well. The only proviso is that you really must use it all up in one go. It will not keep. There is another way of doing it. You can get these little sachets which are full of Phytocelius. And if you hang these up, they will make their own way out of the sachet onto the plant to eat the spider mites. You only have to put them up there for a couple of weeks, and then they will be out. And you will know that it's working because it changes colour. At the moment, these little Phytocelius are white. When it finds a spider mite and eats it, it turns red. So if you see a red mite on there, you know that it's happily digesting the spider mites that it's devoured and saved your wonderful peach from being eaten. Now we're going to the other side of the country now, to Essex, to visit a garden that has unlikely properties. It's very small, it's north-facing, which means it's in full shade. And yet the result is glorious to look at and gives huge pleasure to the gardener.
In my back garden at the moment, I have around 285 species. I think, like most gardeners, I choose plants on a whim sometimes. And sometimes I'll bring it back and I don't know where it's going to go. Sometimes I'll put it in a pot and try that pot in different areas and see where it's most happy. And then if I have the space, I'll put it in the ground. My name is Hayley Holgate, and this is my small garden near Malden in Essex. The garden is 6 metres wide and 12 metres down. It's heavy Essex clay and it's north-facing, which some people might think is a bit of a challenge. I started working in any serious way on the garden about 7 years ago, when I suddenly came to a point in my life where I had a lot of time on my hands because I had been caring for my parents, and I lost both of them quite close together. I was extremely close to my father, and it felt like I just needed a project. And I'd been thinking for a long time we could take out our awful grass that we had here and made a gravel garden with raised beds. And it grew from there. Just added more and more plants. The raised beds got bigger, and it's how it's become now. My favourite flower is probably the Astrantia major. We've got rubra here and superstar, which is the white one. They're really easy care plants. They can cope with quite a lot of shade. You don't need to deadhead them. These will flower for months, and they are utterly beautiful. I didn't think consciously at the time that it would be a way to work through my grief, but it has been immensely good for my well-being. It's really helped me heal. My father loved gardening, so it's absolutely the best thing I could have done. I used to look out of the window and look down on the garden and think, this is what I could do. I wanted the path to meander through. And then really the planting came later. It was very experimental. It evolved over a long period of time as I learnt more and more about the plants. I made loads of mistakes at the beginning, planting things that didn't work or were the wrong size or couldn't cope with the clay. So I think over the years, my ideas of putting colours together have got much better. And sometimes I feel I'm doing it almost unconsciously. So I'm thinking I've planted that plant there and it's picking up the colour of that one over there and that one over there. A lot of people think shade is difficult, but I actually don't think it is. I love the way the light plays through shady areas. This is one of my favourite areas of the garden, partly because it has my acers, which are very beautiful and very precious. I've also discovered lots and lots of different ferns that I really like, and I think they go together very well. Sometimes it's accidental, and sometimes it's deliberate, a perfect complement for each other. Acers are actually really easy plants to look after as long as you don't put them in the sun. My garden naturally provides the right conditions for acers, so they're an obvious choice for this area. They are in pots, so they do need a bit of watering, and sometimes they need repotting just to give them a bit more nutrients, and they are fed as well, but otherwise they need very little care at all. This is a terraced house, so we are overlooked on both sides. I've done what I can to clothe the fences and make it feel more private. This area here is one I've changed around this year a little bit. It's inspired by this geum, which is called Mai Tai, which is my favourite geum. It's absolutely beautiful, peachy pink, changes colour as it gets older. But it has beautiful burgundy stems, and I wanted to kind of bring that out. So I put in some new euphorbias here. This is called Miner's Merlot, and it does change to a lovely burgundy red. And this is Acer Garnet. I moved it from over there. It was a little bit cramped. There's a lot of acers over there. Moved it because I thought that worked really well with it as well. This is a recent acquisition, Salvia salmia, but it should take over the peachy theme when the GMs finish. When I started the garden, I had no gardening knowledge really or experience, only keeping it tidy. I'm fortunate that I work in a library and have good access to gardening books, so I'd take them home and read them during the winter and sort of make notes about plants that I thought I would like to have. Sometimes you can just try things and it doesn't always follow what the advice is. I've got a lot of acid-loving plants in this garden because I put them in when I didn't know that it's supposed to have acid soil. I've got plants like Crinodendron, Pieris, all growing in neutral to alkaline soil with no supplements to help them, and they're growing fine. One of the problems with a garden this size is you're always running out of space, and I continued to collect plants. But I was finding that some of the sun-loving plants that I'd got in pots down the other end of the garden, just down this end, needed to be in soil. So I built some more raised beds down that end. They're much deeper because the ground underneath is really, really hard. It's like concrete, and most of what's in them was in pots before. I always put too much in. My advice to anybody starting out, trying to develop a garden, is to not be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to put lots of plants in the middle because they take the attention away from the boundaries if you've got a very small garden. Your eye goes to the middle rather than the fences. I would like the path not to be straight, but for practical reasons, sometimes parts of it do need to be straight. We will have washing lines, And it doesn't have to cost a fortune. Choose the plants that you like and move them if it doesn't work. It is very much trial and error. You don't have to buy that beautiful plant from the garden centre that is this size, because it's only going to take one season to get that big. It's just a constant source of delight. It calms me. I'm actually quite an anxious person, but I find it a really calming space to be in. I can just breathe. That's why gardening is so good for you. My dad would be so pleased that I finally got the gardening bug that he had all his life. I'm not sure he would entirely approve of my style of gardening. I think it's a bit too heavily planted for him. His taste, his gardens were very, very neat and tidy and beautifully laid out. But I think he would approve. I definitely think he would approve.
I like Hayley's garden, and I particularly like the way that a small garden like that enables you to focus in. You get a depth from them. And I think Hayley has got that absolutely dead right. Now, the Paradise Garden, which is its own enclosed space, relatively small, at this time of year, for a few weeks, all the focus is on these two incredible red roses. This one is Munstead Wood, which fluctuates according to the light from a deep sort of dark crimson to a paler pink as the sun gets it. And then there's Darcy Bustle on the flanks. And to have red roses glowing like this in such abundance and exuberance is actually quite rare. We think of red roses, but they're much harder to grow in many ways and harder to breed, whereas a more pinky colour is easier. So if you get a good red rose and it grows for you well, then treasure it. And I'm so glad that I put these two together, and you get the richness and the voluptuousness of a red rose in June. This is the only azalea that I grow at Longmeadow. It's actually called rhododendron luteum. It's got lovely yellow flowers. And it's confusing because it is an azalea, not a rhododendron. The leaves turn a fantastic, brilliant scarlet, and then they drop and grow back. And because they grow back, they've got a lovely freshness. However, like all rhododendrons and all azaleas, it thrives in an ericaceous soil. Now, my soil here at Longmeadow is not ericaceous. Ericaceous is just a fancy word for acidic. So you have acidic soil and you have alkaline soil. And the middle ground between the two is 7, a pH of 7. So if your pH is anything over 7, it's alkaline. And if it's anything below 6.5, it's acidic. And to be really happy, rhododendrons and azaleas need a pH of no more than 6, and ideally round about 5, 5.5. I can't provide that, so I have to create it. Now, this is an ericaceous compost. It's not your normal compost. It's a peat-free, acidic one. Azaleas and rhododendrons do best in a nice, loose root run. And this is leaf mould made from the garden, which has a pH of round about 6, so it's just slightly acidic. So I'm going to add that to it, like that. And that will open it out a bit. And on top of that, I'm going to add some grit to open it out a bit more. Now, nothing creates drainage better than grit. So just sprinkle that on. That, and then mix it all in. Now, this is going into a big pot, so I don't intend to do this again for at least about another 5 years, so it's worth doing properly. And getting the mix right. If you're potting up a big azalea or rhododendron like this, you don't want to be moving it about. Now, they like some shade. So the trees up above, blocking out the midday sun, are good. This side of the terrace on the mound is slightly more shady than that side, which is why I've put it over here. And yet it does get some sunshine. Oh, it's coming. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful job. Now, I'm just loosening the roots a little. No, that's not too bad. Right, this is the tricky bit. So I'm going right into the corner. And now I am completely trapped. By the way, the reason why I'm repotting is to allow it to grow bigger. If you want to restrict the growth of a shrub or a tree, obviously you can do it by keeping it in the pot. But if you restrict it endlessly so it becomes root bound, then not only will it stop growing, but actually it will begin to suffer because it can't take up enough nutrients or water. So if you want to keep it in the smaller pot, you need to do two things. Prune the top, so there's less demands on the roots, and every now and then, take it out, clean off the soil off the roots, and replace the compost, and put it back in the same pot. By putting it into a bigger pot, effectively, I'm doing that without having to prune the top. So there is room for those roots to grow out into. Right, let's finish this job. It is important when you transplant anything at this time of year, whether it's from one pot to another or one piece of the garden to another, to give it a really good drink. You know, that's a whole 3 gallons. And in the case of azaleas and rhododendrons, and in fact, any ericaceous plant, use rainwater if you possibly can. It's better to use tap water than no water, but rainwater is much less likely to be alkaline and therefore build up lime in the compost. Now, I think that will be fine. It's got room for the roots to grow, the plant will grow bigger. If I want to prune it, I can, but it should give it health and size. And, critically, next spring, I hope it is covered in those glorious, sort of slightly pale yellow flowers. Now, next week is Gardeners World Live. We're all looking forward to it. We're all going to be there. And we went to visit one of the exhibitors who has made a border based upon one of her passions, which is Morris dancing. And she shared her story with us.
Hello, my name is Ellen, and this is my first time designing a border for Gardeners World Live. So I have over 400 plants that I'm growing on in my garden for the show. I've just moved house, so they're taking up all the available space that I have. I changed careers into gardening about 2 years ago. I used to work in community engagement in an art gallery, and I now work as a professional gardener, and I absolutely love it. My border's got a theme that might be surprising. It's Morris dancing, which is one of my passions. I'm part of a Morris side called Heaps Morris, which is made up of women and non-binary people, which would have been really unusual when Morris dancing began. My border encompasses the feel of a Morris dance, with meadow flowers and hedgerow plants flowing in the breeze. In the centre of my design, there's a maple adorned with lots of colourful ribbons, and there will be the sound of bells and jingles filling the air. I really wanted to include some hops in my design. Whenever we go out dancing, we always bring along our pewter tankards to fill with ale or our drink of choice, and I really like that connection between the plant and the dancing. These are my dog rose plants, which have already done lots of flowering already, so I'm quite nervous that they won't have flowers in time for the show, but we'll see. These are my oxeye daisies, which are like a classic native meadow flower, and they've got really lovely little happy faces. They've got loads of flowers already, but loads of buds coming through as well, so I'm pretty confident that they'll have good flowers for the show. I've got lots of native grasses in my show border. This one is quaking grass, which has these delicate seed heads that almost look like little bells, and I think it's lovely. This is field scabious, which is another native meadow flower. It will have, hopefully, some beautiful sort of lilac-y flowers in time for the show, and it also gives like a nice height to the border. This is a little corn marigold, and it will provide variation in height in the show border, as it's got some smaller plants and some taller ones as well. At this stage, I'm really nervous that everything's going to come together in time and the plants are all going to look good. But I'm really excited to show off my passion for Morris dancing and my passion for gardening, and I really hope that everyone will love the Morris dancing border. I'll see you at Gardeners World Live.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing Ellen's border next week at Gardeners World Live. Right, these are going in to support cucumbers. Now, I haven't grown cucumbers outdoors for years and years. But there's no reason, if we have a reasonable summer, why they may not work. And we're going to put another one on this side. So we have a pair. Now, if you've not grown cucumbers before, they are climbing plants. But they can sprawl on the ground. The only downside of that is that you then have the fruits on the ground where they are a bit susceptible to slug damage. Now, this is a variety called Market Moor, and it is particularly good for growing outside. So if you are planning to grow a cucumber outside and you haven't sown the seed yet, just choose your variety carefully, because some are much better adapted than others. It's growing healthily, and if I get that in the ground there like that, I added a barrow load of compost to each of these raised beds. So it's got some food. It's got good drainage, plenty of sunshine, so there's no excuse. It should perform. That can go in there like that. There we go. What they will need is plenty of water. Okay, that's just part of the planting of here, because around them, I'm going to add some beans. These are dwarf beans. It's a variety called Maxi, and I love French beans. And these are plants that you can sow now, and they'll be ready to harvest in August. They're very much a late summer plant, so don't worry if you haven't even begun to plant them. If you're sowing them now, you can sow them direct. I'm planting these out in a grid around the cucumber. It is important to keep the cucumber tied in. It will have its own tendrils, which will attach as it gets growing and gets bigger, and do so securely. This will be a heavy plant. Remember, we've got cucumbers. Cucumbers can be heavy, and you could have as many as half a dozen at a time hanging off it. And as with all cucumbers, the more you pick, the more that will grow. And the beans underneath them should be happy, and I will sow some more directly that will keep the continuity and the succession going. And that's really the trick of all good vegetable growing, is have succession. You are very lucky that this is not smell-o-vision, because this bucket reeks in a horrible way. But it's all in a good cause, because a month ago, I cut some nettles, stuffed as many as I could into this bucket, topped it up with water, and set it to one side. And it has brewed and stewed. It's full of goodness for plants, but particularly nitrogen. And nitrogen is especially good for green growth. So the next stage is to strain it, and then I've got a liquid that I can store and dilute and use as a feed. So you need a sieve, that is essential, and you need something to strain it into. And gently pour it. I don't want this to splash. Whoa, it is splashing a bit. And it's going everywhere. Yeah. Right, let's put that over there. Now I'm going to put this into a bucket because it's easier to pour. So that can live in there, and I'm going to add some to this water. I've diluted to a ratio of about 10 to 1. It's not an exact science, but the one thing that I would say, it's better for it to be too weak than too strong. And I've made it because you can see that my citrus, some of them are distinctly yellowing and need a feed and need a short of nitrogen. I'll also give them a high potash feed as well, but this will do for them. So give that a little bit of a stir. And then give it a feed. And you feed it just like you would normally water it. And I'll do all my citrus to give them a bit of a boost. It's worth pointing out that for citrus, you do need to let them dry out in between watering and then give them a really good soak, which in summer is no more than once a week, and in winter can be every couple of months. So with citrus, water it until the water runs out the bottom, and we do a feed and a water once a week in summer anyway. Now, when we move into a house with a garden, however beautifully that garden has been kept and how full it is of wonderful plants, we have to adapt it to suit ourselves. And last year, Joe went to visit a house in Dorset where a family had been living for decades. And over that time, they have moulded it and shaped the garden to suit not just themselves, but their children and their grandchildren.
We all make gardens for different reasons. We love the creativity, or perhaps we want to just grow some of our favourite plants. But we all want to spend time outdoors in a space that we've created ourselves. So when you find a garden that is enjoyed by generations of the same family, you know you found something special. Annie and Jonathan Roberts have been creating this garden together for over 20 years, transforming it into a space that works for them and their family. John and Annie, what a beautiful spot. So what was it like when you first came here?
We bought it off somebody who was an extremely good gardener, but it was high maintenance. So we decided to simplify it. That's why it's a rather wild garden.
And getting that balance of letting nature come in and controlling it, do you feel like you've got the perfect balance?
You know, you try to drive out nature with a pitchfork and back she comes, doesn't she? We have. But yes, we try to go with nature.
How did it work between you two? Did you just collaborate? Was it smooth and plain sailing?
Well, we have a thing that we call garden rage.
Tell
Which
me
is
about
disagreement in the garden.
Disagreements.
How does that work?
I'll give you an example.
Yes, you give an example.
Because he's tall, the branches of the trees get in his way sometimes, and he cuts the wrong ones off and makes the tree one-sided.
Oh, because he's walking around one side. He
Yes.
wants to walk through
Yes,
one side.
Yes.
Having the time to enjoy the garden with the family is made easier by John and Annie's low-maintenance approach, which welcomes nature in.
I just love this mini wildflower meadow right in the middle of what was manicured lawn. But this works on so many levels. For a start, aesthetically, it's so pleasing. It's full of plants. It feels a bit sort of fluffy and ragged round the edges, so it ties in with the wider landscape beautifully. But also, it's just fantastic for wildlife. From a maintenance point of view, you mow it once a year and you just let it do its thing, and it is fabulous.
But a more formal border complements the natural wildness embraced in the rest of the garden.
Well, this is charming, this area.
Well,
What do we call this part of the garden, Anne?
Well, it's meant to be an herbaceous border.
It's very cottagey. I'd say this is a sort of cottage-style planting. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree, yes. We've allowed the feverfew to come, which is really a wildflower.
And then you've got a lot of height with the perennial plant. I mean, the cephalaria, the giant scabious,
Yes,
is
they're
fabulous. So what's your favourite combo at the moment?
Well, I like it over here because that Physocarpus is dark and tall,
Yeah,
and the white rose seems to work quite well with it,
yeah.
and the pink cosmos work well with the
The sedum's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, it looks great. You've got a great eye.
While Annie's love of flowers and colour is on full display in the borders, the veg garden is John's department.
Everything looks pretty immaculate to me. You're obviously a very good vegetable grower. As you're maturing, shall we say, John, have you changed the way you garden and the way you grow vegetables?
Definitely, yes, because we do no dig.
OK.
So we cover the ground with a fair covering of compost in the autumn, and we let the worms do the work, really. They take the compost down. Of course, the compost keeps the weeds down and encourages the vegetables to grow.
So with the no dig, have you noticed some things do better or some things don't do so well?
Well, the things that possibly don't do so well are the root crops, because I think if you give them too much compost, they things like carrots can divide and split. But things like lettuces, brassicas, peas, they all do very well with the no dig, I think.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd done it since I was a child, you know. I think it's very nice to be able to pick a vegetable at 6 in the evening and eat it at 8, because I believe I've heard it said in Italy that a vegetable loses 1 flavour for every hour that it's picked.
OK.
So
It's got to be fresh.
got to be fresh.
And you're told what to pick, I presume.
Very much so. Very much so.
You come out with
No,
a little shopping list.
I'm under orders. Yeah.
Working with nature underpins everything in this garden.
One approach that John and Anne have gone with in this garden is to let self-seeders do their thing. I mean, here, for example, we've got Alchemilla mollis. It's self-seeded here in a crack in the paving, and look, it's really softening this corner beautifully. And that'll just self-seed around as well, as will this little Mexican fleabane, this erigeron, which is seeded all the way into this wall and into other areas where it finds an opportunity, and it adds a lovely rhythm and continuity to the garden. And if a plant sees an opportunity, seeds itself in there, it will probably do a lot better than a plant that you've planted. And also, it's lower maintenance. You can just leave it to do its thing.
A love of plants is definitely in the Roberts family DNA. Annie and John's daughter Flora is a renowned artist who finds inspiration in the family garden.
Hello, Flora.
Hello.
Can I see your painting?
Yes,
That is beautiful. Wow.
they're all from my mum's garden.
Do you gain a huge amount of inspiration from this garden?
Yeah, I do. I like my mum's choices of flowers and I like her colour schemes. You know, I can come here and I just know that I'm going to find something I really like.
And what does this garden mean to you?
It means an awful lot. There's something very relaxing and very calm, like as if your thoughts slow down. And it's just a wonderful space, actually. My son, Jesse, who's now coming up to 4, he just can spend the whole afternoon out in the garden.
Fantastic. So a gardener in the making.
Yeah, very much so.
But it's so nice to have 3 generations of the same family in the same garden, forging some incredible memories.
I think that's really important. It's a real privilege, isn't it, actually?
You've made this garden, you've put your heart and soul into it. Do you feel an emotional connection with this garden?
I think you've got to
Yes.
if you love gardening, don't you
Yes,
think so?
yes,
It's something to have done. It's something to leave behind.
yes, absolutely.
Well, I can certainly share the experience of being in a garden for a long time. And there is this idea of making a garden that you pass on. You may not pass it on to your family, it may be to strangers, but there's definitely a sense that the garden lasts longer than you do. You know, you're visiting, and it's great, but in time, someone else will take over. And when they do, they're going to have to weed, because here in the woodland garden, there are a lot of weeds growing. We put on masses of compost, about a 4 or 5 inch layer across the whole area, and then we added leaf mould on top of that, and it's slowly working in. But inevitably, with the compost, are a certain amount of weed seeds. You can't help that. That's not in itself a bad thing. If you can clear it before they get too big and too bad, you can get on top of it. And then these plants will spread and they'll cover the ground and the weeds won't get any light. But here, for example, we can take that out. So it's good just to come in here and spend an hour or so just getting on top of things. And gradually, the barrow fills up with weeds, which can then complete the circle, because I'll take the weeds to the compost heap. I need to stress, you can compost almost all weeds. The only things that I don't compost are the roots of bindweed, ground elder, and couch grass. Everything else goes on the heap, and that makes the best goodness you possibly can have for your garden. Now, I'm going to add this to what is already a considerable pile. Now, this pile, if heaped up, would make compost in time. But you can speed up the process a lot, at least make it twice as fast, by chopping it up, increasing the surface area. And that makes it much easier for the bacteria to work. And homemade compost is better than anything you can buy because it's got all the biome and the ecosystem of your garden, your plants, and your soil. So do make compost if you can, on whatever scale. It doesn't matter. Just make some. So, this weekend, I am going to have to process this lot. And here are your jobs for the weekend. At this time of year, fruit trees such as apples, pears or peaches tend to be crowded with young fruitlets, and it's a good idea to thin them so that you get better quality when it comes to harvest. I'm doing this with my peach tree, and it looks quite radical, reducing them down even to 1 every 6 inches. Although it looks harsh, the result will be a much better harvest when they're ripe. It's too early to do any radical hedge cutting because there are still nesting birds that will be disturbed. But you can give a light trim particularly to evergreen hedges like yew or box. Simply remove the wispy elements on the top and the sides, and that will sharpen them up and tie the whole garden together. And then in August and September, you can do your proper hedge cutting. Now is the time to sow some Florence fennel for harvesting later in summer. This is a vegetable that doesn't do well if sown too early in the season. So sow it now, and it'll be ready to plant out in about 6 to 8 weeks' time, and the harvest in September and October. It doesn't like disturbance, so if you can sow it into plugs and then plant it straight from the plug, it'll do much better. This is a job that I love doing, and I do every single day throughout the month of June, and it's deadheading roses. And the reason you do it, of course, is to encourage new buds to form and therefore new flowers, and keep the roses flowering for longer. It also tidies them up. This is one of my favourite roses. It's Gallica, called Charles de Mills. And you can see that is spent. The petals are falling off, and I could just pull them away like that. But what's left behind will develop into a rose hip and take the energy away from new buds. So you want to prune it, don't take just the top off like that, but go right down to the next stem. So if we see that there, you've got lovely new a bud opening out, you've got a perfectly good flower head there, but this is spent. Prune it down. Now I just chuck it down on the ground, and that will act as a mulch and rot in. And there's another one there. This definitely helps the roses. It keeps them looking good and promotes some fresh buds, and therefore increases the flowering time. But I think the best thing about this is what you get out of it. To spend just 10 minutes a day immersed in roses, relishing them, taking the fragrance and the sight of these incredibly delicate petals, but the powerfulness of the effect they have. And in the end, this is what gardening is for. It's about joy. So enjoy every second of it. And next week, we will be at Gardeners World Live enjoying that, and I'll be there with the rest of the team, and I'll see you back here at Longmeadow in a couple of weeks' time. So until then, bye-bye.